Hey everyone, today we are going to cover the best comps in patch 17.6. There's going to be a Riot summer break, so we are on this patch for the next 2 weeks, which means that we really need to master everything in here in order to get a pretty decent climb going. So in the S tier, we have Vex and the 2 tanky Samira comp. I decided to bump up 2 tanky because I did some reassessing and it is indeed 2 tanky. But despite just having 2 comps up here, that doesn't mean anything else isn't good too. Like there's a lot of other comps you can play right now. I moved this around quite a bit actually, but Stargazer Xayah, I think got a nice little resurgence. Mecha is really fun to play. You know me, I like some Mecha here and there. Brawler Yi, pretty good with emblems. Primordian Jinx, very nice. Pretty good option for 2-cost reroll. And then Lissandra reroll for 1 cost, still pretty good. And then Vanguard Fast 9, a different variation. Space Groove, good if you get an emblem for it. And then Shepherd Leblanc. Leblanc, I think, is making a bit of a comeback right now. And then lastly, we have Darkstars. But we'll cover how to play each and every one of these comps. Let's get right into it. We have, starting up in the S tier, Vex Fast 9. If you watch my previous videos, this should come as no surprise here. If you're able to get a good win streak going, if you're able to get a ton of econ, getting some form of late game built around Vex plus some random tanks is really nice. You could also do Graves if you get an early Graves. Graves early pretty much just means you get to buy upgrades from earlier, which makes him a lot more powerful than he normally would be. And you could do all sorts of different builds on him. I do have like a little recommendation down here in the tips section. I kind of like the melee-ish version of him. That's why I like having the Quicksilver, but you could do the range version. Pretty much any of the Graves versions work out pretty decently. You just need to tailor your items to it. Another thing I like about this comp is having the Akali Aatrox combo. It just gives your team so much utility that the rest of the units don't really matter, so you don't have to worry too much about getting very specific traits. Most of the units in here, they don't really care that much about having a trait. But there's also the no Graves version. You could just run something like Ross instead, or just like a random tank. Like you could do something like Maokai plus Tahm Kench also instead of Ross and something else. Morgana's just really good right now. She belongs in like a lot of different comps that don't really need specific units. Next build up we have is the 2 tanky Samira reroll. This one is going to be working if you get the 2 tanky augment. I don't really recommend the standard version because the main power is from just 2 tanky. It goes to S tier with 2 tanky and probably like B+ tier without it. 3-cost reroll, get the 2 tanky augment, get another reroll augment or a duplicator augment, 3-item Ornn, 3-item Samira, call it a day. If you get extras, you could itemize Nami a little bit there. Just make sure to always run 2 copies of both Ornn and Samira. They're pretty much the only units that matter in this comp. And yeah, you're going to be having to do a bit more extra rolling whenever you are trying to stabilize for them, because once you get them to 2-star, you still need the extra copy to unlock the full power of the comp. Next build up we have is Stargazer Xayah. Redid this comp a little bit. You pretty much have 2 tank options, either Tahm Kench or Nunu. Nunu is going to be a bit easier to play because he's both a Stargazer with Xayah, but I think Tahm Kench is a bit more tanky. Nunu does provide a lot of utility though with his great crowd control ability, but pretty much what you do is you build random tank items. You don't go for specific ones, and then whoever you 2-star first, that's who holds the items. If you want to tailor your items later, let's say you have a bunch of Protector's Vow on your Tahm Kench because you 2-starred Tahm Kench early. Once you get both of them 2-star, you can kind of use your item removers to distribute the items as you see fit. Tahm Kench taking more so the main tank items, and then Nunu taking more so the mana items. The good news about this comp is that you don't need too much utility because you are going to be running Aatrox. Aatrox provides armor shredding for your team, so you don't need that at all. Jhin also does the same thing, but his is a 10% effect on top of the Aatrox effect of Shred and Sunder, which means you really only need anti-heal, which is going to be great on Xayah with the red buff. The only unfortunate part about Xayah is that in this build here that I recommend, you need 4 bows. It's kind of hard to get 4 bows, you know, it doesn't happen every single game. But if you have red buff plus Kraken plus random 3rd item, you can kind of get away with that, you know? But I'd say Kraken Slayer probably going to be Xayah's best item, and especially the double Kraken combo. But if you don't have the red buff, let's say you build something else on Xayah, you probably need a Sunfire Cape on someone in the front line. Just put it on whoever you have 2-starred. After that, Jhin going to be a secondary carry in the super late game. Mainly it's going to be Xayah doing most of the work, and in order to do that, you need the Serpent, Boar, or Altar Stargazer constellation. The other ones do work, but they're just not as good as the ones listed here. And again, you want to play this comp when you have Tempo AD opener or a lot of bows. This is just like a standard fast 8 comp. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 costs, which are all super critical. And there also is a different version built around Bastion with Rammus and Meeples. This one is okay. I prefer the standard one just because it's a lot easier to get into. This comp you only really play if you just randomly hit 2-star Rammus, because not too many people are playing Rammus right now because the Meeple comp is a bit weaker right now. Next build up we have is a 6 Mecha comp. This one's built around the Mighty Mech and Acel. The other units don't really matter that much. They're more of a luxury. So just make sure you get stone plates on this comp. Like having the best in slot Mighty Mech is incredibly important because you need him to be able to tank like pretty much everything. Like I know you're running other tanks in this comp, but you focus so much power on the Mighty Mech because he takes up 2 slots. So if you ever get like stone plates on him, he's just pretty much unkillable for most of the fight. After that, Acel, his items do matter, but not as much as a Mighty Mech. But any generic AP would do well on Acel. Just do not build any mana items on Acel. They're pretty bad on him. After that, I'd focus on utility items. Something like Tahm Kench with a Sunfire Cape plus the Shred items work out pretty decently. Obviously, you only need the Ionic Spark if you only have Acel itemized, but if you have Urgot itemized, then you could use something like the Even Shroud to kind of balance that out. But pretty much just throw whatever leftover tank items on Tahm Kench, throw whatever leftover items on Urgot, and sometimes you could even do Fiora. But honestly, you're not going to have this many items. Just focus on the Mighty Mech, focus on Acel, and then get the utility items. Pretty much the same as any other comp. Normally, you do like 1 damage dealer, 1 tank, and then the utility item holder holds 2 items, whatever resistance penetration you need, and anti-heal. I wouldn't say every comp does that, because like the one we just looked at up here, like Xayah likes the red buff, but in most comps, that's kind of how it works out. Next comp up we have is Master Yi. Brawler Yi, very fun to play. If you have Brawler Emblem, this comp probably goes to at least A+, if not S-. I personally love Brawler Yi, and the only real requirement you have on this comp is getting like a decent early game and also getting a Edge of Night on him. Also, AD Psionic items are preferred, but they're not like absolutely required. But all that being said, this comp is not like super OP in that if you get a good Psionic item, you don't just hard force it. Also, if you get Master Yi early and have a bunch of bruisers already, it doesn't matter if you have like a bad Psionic item, like you could still play it. So don't hard force this. I mean, you can if you really want to. That's a personal decision. But for me, this comp is just like one of those solid comps, which is like a decent option for level 8 if you're forced to do that. So if you ever get like a level 8 econ augment, this is something to go to consider, especially if you have a bunch of melee items built up already from the early game. Late game, you want to play something like Fiora to complement this, but pretty much like emblems help the comp a lot, like Marauder, Brawler. Those 2 emblems are really, really good in this comp, but you could use all sorts of different things here. Another thing is that kindred items are like pretty important, but I'd focus on the Yi and the Tahm Kench first. After that, like you just throw leftover items on kindred, or it could even be Fiora. Like sometimes I have 0 item kindred, sometimes I have 0 item Fiora. Really just depends who I'm itemizing up. Just make sure you focus your items on one character, because 3 items concentrated on one character is more important than pretty much anything else. Next build up we have is the Primordian Jinx build. This one's a 2-cost reroll. We have Jinx, Bel'Veth, and Akali. The one neat thing about this comp is that you mainly just focus on like your damage items. Like obviously like Rek'Sai Tank is going to be solid if you can get it, but you mainly just focus on the damage items here. So it's unique in that sense. You obviously want to do a 2-cost reroll pattern. And for Jinx, you want to just slam as much attack damage on her as possible. She's also pretty decent at holding a Last Whisper because she does her like little spray thing. I do have the priority of who gets the items down here. It's going to go Jinx, Bel'Veth, then Akali, then your tank. But pretty much you want to get as many swords as you can because this comp can use an infinite amount of swords. Pretty much swords go on Jinx, bows go on Bel'Veth, call it a day after that. But overall, I think this is a pretty fun comp to play. There aren't too many other 2-cost reroll comps out there right now. In fact, I think like most comps are going to be the level 8 and level 9 comps, but this is just one of the other options out there. Oh, another important thing is that you need to be winning early game with this comp. So just keep that in mind when you're playing this. Don't like try to like hard force this from a lose streak. I mean, you can do it, but it's not going to be as effective. Pretty much you just take a lot of item augments whenever you play this and use that to kind of get a decent streak from. Next comp up we have is going to be Darkstar Lissandra. So for this, you really need Lissandra's best in slot. That's going to be the Double Nashor's Jeweled Gauntlet, and Darkstar Emblem also makes this even better. So with all that being said, it's pretty situational. Like you need a lot of Lissandras early, you need good items for her, and you need the emblem. If you meet all 3 of those conditions, autoplay this for sure. But if not, if you have like 2 of the 3, you better be like really strong in one of them. Like what I mean by that is if you have like Darkstar Emblem and like 5 Lissandras on stage 2-1, but you don't have any items for her, I'd say that's probably fine to go for this because you have like 5 Lissandras. If you just had like 3 Lissandras, maybe not. Maybe you probably just want to go into regular Darkstar, use her as an item holder, and do something else. So I think scale is pretty important here. Whenever you're playing this, scale as in like how hard you're hitting the condition is not like a yes or no. Another thing to keep in mind is that Cho'Gath, while nice, is not mandatory, but if you get them both up and running, like Cho'Gath getting stacks is absolutely great for this comp, especially if you can hit both of them 3-star during your 1-cost reroll. So like 1-cost reroll, don't spend gold, don't level up at the start of the game, and then on stage 3-1, you roll down to around like 30-ish gold. Most people do down to 32 so that they can econ back up to 40 and 50. Quickly after that. And then after that, you econ back up, do an all-in on stage 4-1. All-in meaning like roll down all your gold to hit both Lissandra 3 and Cho'Gath 3, and then use that to kind of be your mid-game board, and then late game, you add in the 6 Darkstar. Much easier to do with the emblem, which is why it's important to get, and then you get a pretty decent game from that. Next build up we have is Vanguard Fast 9. All the same rules from the other Fast 9 applied. This is just like a different version of it. If you get Vanguard start, like a lot of times when you play Fast 9, you just have random frontline, random damage dealer in the back. Sometimes you have Vanguards. You could go into something like this where you have like the triple AP carries in the back. So if you get a lot of AP items, if you have a bunch of Vanguards, this is definitely a viable option here. I'd say like Sona and Vex are like the main 2 characters you care about. Bard is good, but he's kind of more supportish than the other ones. And also Bard can get you the dragon, which is really nice to play in this build. But same exact game plan applies. High health, high econ opener, get to level 9 around like stage 4-5 or 5-1 with like tons of gold, maybe like 50 plus to roll down with. Maybe have like 3 lives left or at least 2. Hit your comp, stabilize, and try to win the game off of that. Pretty simple game plan, but harder to do just because it's a bit rare to get like full win streaks every single time. Next build up we have is Space Groove. Space Groove absolutely needs the emblem because Riven without the Space Groove emblem is so much worse. I would not even consider playing this, but there are 2 things you can do. Like you could do the mid game comp, which is like the 5 Space Groove, and then the late game, which is 7. It's nothing too crazy there. You just do some little replacements on the comp. But the important thing is just to have everyone you have itemized have their traits activated. So if you have Nami, you need Replicator. If you have Riven, you need Rogue. Nunu needs Vanguard. So luckily Vanguard is easy to get because there are 2 different Vanguards in this comp that are Space Groove. It's Blitzcrank and Nasus. So in the 5 Space Groove version, you could play something like this. Mana items on Nunu, utility on Blitzcrank, double Nashor's JG on Nami, and then random items on Riven plus a Space Groove emblem. And then in 7 Space Groove, you can take out the Nunu, put in Nasus instead, add in another Space Groove. It's going to be Samira. That way you could hit 7, and then you throw all your tank items onto Tahm Kench instead of the Nunu. So that's kind of how it works out like that. Obviously, 7 Space Groove is a pretty big power spike, but sometimes it is hard to get to because it's hard to get Blitzcrank sometimes. But what I like most about this comp is that you're pretty flexible in the tanks. It could be either Nunu or Tahm Kench are solid options, so you could just see whoever you hit first. Obviously, like Nami or Riven, both of them can carry, but I would prioritize Nami items first, just because Riven can literally use anything. But pretty much just do fast 8. You got 4 costs you're rolling for. Don't go to level 9 till at least 3 of them are 2-starred, if not 4 of them. Or if you have like a billion life to spare, then you could go level 9 straight away without rolling at 8, but that's going to be a bit rare. Next build up we have is going to be the LeBlanc Flex comp. I like this one a bunch. Like Morgana, I've been saying Morgana's really good the whole time, right? But there are like 3 different versions of this. All 3 of them are like decently viable. You pretty much just want a stat boosting Arbiter for LeBlanc. You absolutely need Gwynsu's, and then you also need 2 sets of carry items. But pretty much for frontline, you could play anything. You could play Morgana, you could play Shepherd, you could play Vanguards. All of these work, and it's mainly because Illaoi plus LeBlanc is such a good combo. They're both Shepherd, and then Illaoi also unlocks the Vanguard trait, which has a lot of randomly splashable units, such as Nunu for CC or Blitzcrank for late game. But Morgana's pretty OP right now, so me personally, I kind of like this comp a lot, but honestly, all 3 of them work. It really just depends what you're hitting that game. Like, are you hitting Nunus? Play the Nunu version. Are you hitting all the Shepherds? Play the Shepherd version. Do you have Shepherd emblem? Play the Shepherd version. Did you hit Morgana? Play the Morgana version. A lot of things in this comp are decently flexible, and the items are pretty flexible too. Like, you pretty much just need Rageblade on LeBlanc. The other items don't really matter that much. And also, you do need a secondary carry. It could be either Karma or something like Sona. Any of them work there. They pretty much take anything. Apart from that, just make sure you have some form of anti-heal and magic shred. So that's going to be the Morello plus Void Staff. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. Level 8 comp, obviously, you're rolling for like 3-4 costs in all of these versions. You want Karma, Morgana, LeBlanc, Nunu, things like that. And yeah, solid comp. You could use it to go into Vex in the super late game also. Next build up we have is the 6 Darkstar version. Only play this with Darkstar emblem. It's pretty bad otherwise, but if you do get the emblem, you have a lot of different options for what to play. I think Ezreal is going to be pretty solid right now. One thing you could do is check on teamfight.lol, go to the Explorer, type in Darkstar emblem, add that. And then, yeah, like Ezreal going to be the most popular version out there right now. 4.2, not bad. Riven 4.14, also not bad. Xayah 4.49, you know, not as great. But overall, still pretty solid comp. You kind of just have to see what items you have. If you have like the crit items, obviously go Ezreal. If you have a bunch of melee items, obviously go Riven. That's kind of how you decide what version to go for whenever you have the Darkstar emblem. But I'd focus most on this comp here, the Ezreal one, just because it's, one, the most popular. Popularity doesn't mean like good or bad. It just means it's the most tested. So if you have a high sample size with like decent average placement in the stats, more often than not, it's going to be pretty solid to play. Compare that to something like, I don't know, we could scroll down here. I guarantee you some random thing is doing pretty well. Actually, no, they're not. But sometimes like down here, there's something with like a 3.5 average placement with like 100 games played. Like those are generally pretty fake because they just really haven't been time tested, you know? But pretty simple here, just do a fast 8. You don't need 2-star Jhin, so you don't need level 9 as much as other comps do, but obviously it is nice to fit in extra units. But if you ever get a 1-star Jhin and also have Darkstar emblem, then it's like really huge power spike. Also with the Darkstar emblem, you're not reliant on hitting Jhin, so that's why rolling on level 8 is so important, because you're really just focused on getting all the 4-cost units. Tahm Kench, Nunu, Karma, Ezreal. If you get those, like, you're gonna have a pretty solid game. Gonna be a bit difficult to stop. But this comp, you're not gonna be playing it that much because again, you just need to get the Darkstar emblem. I'd say by stage like 3-2, after you pick your augment, you gotta lock in this comp or pivot to something else, just because having the emblem literally just is that important. Alternatively, if you just have a random Jhin in stage 3, then you could go this comp without the emblem. That I would say is like the only scenario where you're allowed to go for this without the emblem. But that's going to be all the S and A tier comps. Let's go back up to the top to sum up. I'd say like the Corki comp, not as good right now, so I moved that to the B tier. Bit unfortunate, honestly, but I'd say in terms of like breakdown for how often you're going to be playing which comp, Vex Fast 9, honestly, you're not going to be playing it that often, maybe 4 out of 20 games. Like, let's say you play 20 games in a patch. We got like 2 weeks, right? So if you play like 10 games per week, 20 total. Vex, you'll probably play like maybe 4 times in the next 2 weeks. 2 Tanky Samira, the augment doesn't show up that much. Maybe you play it 1 or 2 times. That means you have like 15 games where you have a lot of these A tier comps. So let's take the easier ones out of the way, like emblem requirements of Darkstar and Space Groove. Maybe you play each of these twice. So we're at about like 9 or 10 games. Maybe you play each of the reroll comps once. So now we're at 11 and 12 games. So that gives you like 8 more games to play around like the Darkstar Xayah, Mecha, Brawler Yi, and the Shepherd comp. So I'd say I'd spend most of my time in this area over here. And obviously if you don't play reroll, you're going to be playing these even more. But what I like about these 3 comps is that they're very reliable. They're all level 8 comps. They don't have like crazy requirements. So you can just spam these comps a bit more compared to everything else, which just makes things a lot easier to play. So probably like out of these 3, yeah, you're probably going to be playing them like 10 out of those 20 games, maybe like 3 or 4 games each of these, depending on what you hit too. It could be like a 4-3-2 or like a 2-3-4 in terms of how many games you're playing with them. But they're just going to be a bit more reliable than some of the other comps out there because they're just a bit less conditional. But I'd say like overall, try to still go for the win streaking into Fast 9 just because it is going to be the best thing possible. And then if you lose your win streak, think of something else to pivot to based on what items you slammed already. I'm going to be coming out with an opener guide in the next couple of days. So hopefully there we can figure out which units to keep in stage 1, which units to go for in stage 2, which comps build into what from each unit, things like that. So stay tuned if you are going to be interested in that. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video and I'll see you all in the next one.